I'm especially excited to kick off the series today, a series which, I kid you not, has been many, many months in planning. I think our first meeting was way back before COVID was even a thing on our radar. But before we get started today, I want to acknowledge a couple of people, those people who've made huge contributions, people, organizations who have worked to make this event possible today. And of course, I won't be able to name everyone, but I want to name a couple. First, I want to thank the leadership of the American Folklore Society, Jessica Turner and Lorraine Walsh-Cashman. Also want to thank the members of our local planning committee, which are numerous. And then we'd also like to thank the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts. The Creative Catalyst Grant has made this entire summer-long series possible. You know, given the COVID-related uncertainties, as a committee, we felt that a summer-long virtual series would be the best way to ensure that the traditions and the perspectives of the diverse communities who live here in central Pennsylvania be shared with you. And so over the coming months, we will be featuring artists and musicians, tradition bearers, and other representatives of our community. And we hope that these spark conversations about practice, about community, about resilience, and about sustainability. So we hope you will be able to attend, and we hope you feel connected to the Burg and to more generally to central Pennsylvania. Our next event is scheduled for June 8th, and we will be featuring the Balkan dance music of Sveraj. So we hope you check out our calendar of events on the AFS website and on AFS's various social media sites. And be sure to look for registration details in the future. Now, we know that today's event is happening on Eid, marking the end of Ramadan and the month of fasting for our Muslim colleagues. And while today we are focusing on the spring treats of another religious tradition, we offer our warmest Mubarak blessings to those celebrating and feasting today in Muslim communities around the world. Now, in just a minute, I'm going to be turning the time over to Chris Muley to review some technological ground rules and to describe the Q&A process. And after Chris is finished, we'll turn the time over to our moderators for today. We will hear from our newly minted Dr. Mira Johnson, congratulations, Mira, and Dr. David Puglia, both folklorists and both formerly of Central Pennsylvania, and both of whom have researched and published on the Easter egg traditions of Central PA. And we'll also hear from Dr. Yvonne Millspaugh, my co-chair, herself a folklorist with both familial roots and research ties to the area. So thank you guys again for being here. Thank you for joining us. Chris?
Hi, everybody. Thanks a lot, Brent. Great job. Thanks so much, Yvonne, David, and Mira for connecting me to what you've been doing at your local committee and to the traditions in Pennsylvania and today Central Pennsylvania. So as Brent said, I'm sort of your tech advisor here behind the scenes. So I'm just going to urge everybody to add questions. There's a Q&A box on your Zoom, which I'll be monitoring. If you have some adverse relationship with the Q&A box, please feel free to put it in the chat and I'll track it. And because it's really important that we have a conversation here today, and we really want your insight and your ideas, and this is going to be a great event. So thanks to everyone for being here. I'm going to hand it over to David, Mira, and Yvonne, and thanks everyone for coming and being here today. Okay.
All right, yes, thank you everyone so much for being here. I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see, watch this. All right, yeah, so thanks again everyone for joining us. Thanks to the committee for setting this up. So let's kick this off. In this panel, we're focusing on two traditions from South Central Pennsylvania where the AFS 2021 meeting will be. We have this region highlighted on the map, including with the star, the conference location of Harrisburg specifically. So South Central Pennsylvania is in, for those who are not familiar with it, is in the foothills of the Appalachians with the Susquehanna and Juniata rivers running through it. Philadelphia is somewhat nearby off to the east. Pittsburgh is a little bit more distanced off to the west. It's mining country to the north. And the area was once considered the wilderness or the frontier. It was what Benjamin Franklin refers to in his autobiography as the wilderness. Many prominent folklorists have spent time in central Pennsylvania, and some of them have researched specifically or in part the traditions of the region. You might be familiar with some of the books or some of the folklorists who just dropped in there. You also may be familiar with the vernacular art and architecture of Pennsylvania barns, brick end barns, hex signs, or classic, perhaps, Pennsylvania Dutch foodways, Fosnot, shoofly pie, pork and sauerkraut, scrapple. But today we focus on the egg.
The world is full of egg traditions, and Pennsylvania happens to carry on many of those. Some even claim that Pennsylvania is the point of origin for the Easter egg tradition in North America. The egg is a traditional Easter icon laden with a myriad of Christian and pre-Christian symbolic layers, including spring, fertility, material wealth, rebirth, resurrection, and the Eucharist. In the 19th century, Central and Eastern Europeans brought a variety of Easter egg traditions to central Pennsylvania. In his authoritative Eastertide in Pennsylvania, prominent Pennsylvania folklorist Alfred Shoemaker wrote extensively on the egg as symbol in Pennsylvania Easter traditions, including egg trees, wood-carved and painted eggs, scratch-carved eggs, and confectionery and candy eggs.
Central and Eastern European pisanki, or what we will learn about today, Polish pisanki, are vivid, intricately decorated Easter eggs using wax and dye. The tradition is known across Central and Eastern Europe, with the technique varying in and by different regions. And in Pennsylvania, the handcraft is passed from generation to generation, continues to play an important role in Easter traditions, and has drawn the attention of folklorists for some time now.
Each February, South Central Pennsylvania residents see signs for chocolate Easter eggs sold by local churches. It's an old recipe that has become a widespread community tradition in the late 20th century, one that's an important fundraiser for charitable organizations in the region. It's an emergent Dauphin County confectionery tradition whose importance exceeds mere consumption, creating a sense of community among both producers and consumers at this special time of year.
All right.
Stop our share.
We'll stop our sharing there. And then we're going to call in our co-panelist, Yvonne, to introduce our first tradition bearer here, Barb Felty.
And I'm very delighted to introduce Barbara Felty, who ought to be up pretty soon here. Barbara is a friend of mine I've known since college, and she has practiced a tradition of making pisanki, a Polish tradition, for as long as I've known her, really. So I'm very, very happy that Barb was willing to come and talk with us today about her tradition. So Barb, my first question is, who are you anyway? But maybe that's not a good one. Go for it. Tell us about yourself, Barb.
I'm Barb Felty. I'm Dennis Felty, and I have 2 beautiful children, and I have 4 beautiful grandchildren. And I've got into the egg decorating from my mother and my grandmother. My grandmother came from Poland, and she came here to the United States, and my mother was the first born in the United States. And we learned all of the egg decorating from her. She brought it with her from Poland. So every time I learn this process and do this process, I think of my mother and my grandmother and my tradition. And it's a real gift to the family, which I'm trying to pass on at this point in time.
Okay, and what do you do with the eggs? I know we're going to have you demonstrate that in a little bit, but what do you do with them?
You give them away. That's the tradition we have. you make the eggs. They're like a gift of spring, and it for the religious aspect of it, it is the resurrection of Christ, new life, and spring coming. You make your eggs, and you give them as gifts at Easter time. Usually, the priest gets the first; he gets the best of the lot, and he usually keeps them in the office so that when the parishioners come in, they can see them. And then you give them to your friends. They're gifts to be enjoyed. Some people hang on to them and keep them from year to year. Others do not, and it's whatever people do with them.
Okay, so this is your mom's and your grandmother's tradition, brought with them from, I understand it's the Polish-Ukrainian border, because you're using the word Pysanki, which I think is Ukrainian. Am I right on that?
Pysanki is from the Ukrainian verb meaning to write or to inscribe. So when you say Pysanki, it covers a lot of different regional traditions. There's several of them. The Pysanki you usually think of as Ukrainian eggs, which are just artistically made. And then there's the marguche, which is where you dye the egg and you actually scratch the design into it. And then the method I was taught from my mother and my grandmother is called the drop and pull. So you use that. I'll be showing how we do that. And it's very primitive. It's very basic. Anybody can do it.
Why don't you, can you show us some of the eggs you've made and then give us a brief demonstration of how you do it, please?
Sure. We're gonna have to move our iPad here.
Fine, that's fine.
The other way.
Okay. In case Barb doesn't have enough, I have some eggs that are dated here that she and I made together in 1989. This has my children's name on it, Wesley, and then my other child, Brant. And, I suppose it's a disclosure here, but Barb's husband is also my cousin. So we've known each other kind of all our lives. Oh, beautiful, Barb. That looks great.
Yeah. Now some of these are multicolored, and it's just you just have to dye them several times and put the wax on several times. I'll show how that is done. And can you see that, Dennis?
That looks really beautiful. Really
All right.
beautiful.
The ones I usually save to remember the design.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Good.
Okay. All right.
Can you demonstrate a little bit now of how you do those? Oh, you're getting ready. All right.
Here. All right. Now the Pysanki, the Ukrainian Pysanki eggs, they look like this. They are works of art, and they are done with a tool called a kiska, and there's all different sizes. This one is small, but you would put the molten wax, and it's usually beeswax. You want to use a very high quality wax. The molten wax goes in there, and then you can draw on the egg. You can get continuous lines. Now, my grandmother lived on a farm, and they didn't have access to any of that. They did the drop and pull method, and you could use a stick with a nail, or like this, a pencil with a straight pin, and you put the straight pin right into the eraser, and you're working with the straight pin and the head of the straight pin. And for time purposes, I did put wax on some of this egg, and you can see I have it going around, and I have it there. And we'll put the last part here. You put your pencil with your little straight pin, make sure it's hot. I have it on a griddle. You can use a hot pad. If you have an electric stove, you can use that. I have this at about 325, which keeps my beeswax hot without burning it. And you keep your pencil. You have to prepare your eggs ahead of time, and you do that by, for this method, you do it by boiling them in distilled water, and vinegar. And then you let them all cool. You wash them again afterward with distilled water and vinegar, or you could do a solution of with distilled water and ivory soap. The eggs have to be completely dry and cold before you put the wax on. And we do it here. You put in there, you put your center dot. That is you're gonna work right around from that. You drop it and you pull. And you make the pinwheel. The pinwheel is pretty basic. There's a lot of designs that my grandmother made, and they all involve the pinwheel. When you're first starting this and you're first learning this, it comes out pretty chicken scratch. You have to keep doing it for a while until you get the feel of the wax, the feel of the process. And you want to put your needle in at an angle so you're getting a lot of wax on that straight pin. And that's your finished design.
Neat.
Now you can put multiple colors. This one, I have the wax on the white egg, and then you can put wax, I dyed it red, then you can put the wax on the red, and then you can dye it again. You want to start with your lighter colors and go deeper each time if you're going to do multiple colors. Now this we will put into the dyes. There are all kinds of dyes you can use. I use the pause dyes. You can use food coloring. They all give you pastel colors. And then there's the Pisanki dyes, which are deeper and brighter. If you're working with children, you have to be careful with the Pisanki dyes because they are permanent. And that's why when I work with them, I usually have the table covered. And when I'm doing it, this whole table is filled with dyes. And you cover everything with newspapers or something to protect. And the Pisanki dyes dye very quickly. They don't take much time at all. The pause dyes take a little bit longer. Now my grandmother, she lived on a farm and she did not have access to any of these dyes. She used what was on the farm. She would use onions, a solution of onions to give her yellow or browns. She would use beets to get reds. She would use elderberries for purples. Black she could get with walnut shells or ashes. She could use moss, whatever they had in the farms. That's she would make a solution. And they had natural dyes. And then when that's done, you just very gently dry it off. And you have your egg. Then you have to let that dry. And I'll put this down here. And your next step, now that you have all of this wax on that egg, is to get the wax off. This one is one I finished before, and the wax is all on. There's several ways to get the wax off. You can take a little cake spatula and just very gently take it off. A faster way is you get a candle and you hold the egg up to the candle and you wipe it off as it melts. You have to be very careful not to get the egg too close. All you want to do is get it hot enough so that the wax starts to melt and you wipe it off. Another way to do it is getting one of those embossing guns, and that gives a very high heat. It works very good, but you have to be careful again not to get the egg too hot. You just want the hot enough so that the wax comes off. But whatever color is under the wax, that is the color that is protected. Now over here, and you always want it, when you're making your dyes or you're doing your eggs, you always want to use distilled water, because regular water or well water has a lot of minerals in it, and that will affect the dyes. Over here, if you look at this egg, I put the wax on the white egg, and then I colored it red. And then when that dried, I put wax on the red egg, and then I colored it. This is a dark green. And then when you take all the wax off, it preserves the colors that is underneath the wax. You can keep going. You can put as many colors as you have room on the egg. So you have to think about it ahead of time, what your design's going to be.
Hey, Barbara, we have a few questions from audience. So one question from Marilyn is, when you learned this tradition, was it in English or Polish? And if it was in English, did you learn the Polish or Ukrainian terms for the various steps you're making?
No, my grandmother did not speak English. She only knew a few words of English. I learned this from my mother.
Okay.
And she taught us, I have a brother and a sister, and she taught all three of us how to do this. And my grandma was there, and but my mother was doing the instructing.
Okay. And another couple questions, again from Marilyn. You had mentioned using ivory soap. Is there any other kind of soap? Is ivory the preferred one, or is there some?
I've read several places you can use Dawn soap.
Mhm.
For the dish soaps. You don't want to use anything too harsh. What you're trying to do is just get off when you boil the eggs, sometimes some of them will crack. And when that happens, proteins can get into the water. So when you take them out, your egg could have a coating on it that you don't want. That's going to mess up your colors and your wax. So you want to just wash all of that off gently. Some people just use water and vinegar to wash the eggs afterward. And you have to be careful with when you boil these eggs. A lot of times you'll boil them and you'll get a crack in the egg. And when they cool, that crack closes and you don't see it. Now you can still work with that egg, but what will happen is when if you're saving it, over time, you're going to get an odor, because when you're saving them in a hard-boiled egg, there is a process of decay going on inside. And that odor, if it gets out of the egg, you'll know it. Okay.
Another question. Did your grandmother keep her own bees to get the beeswax, or how did she get the beeswax?
I don't know how she got it in Poland when she lived in Poland. She lived in a little town called Galena, but that doesn't exist anymore. But so I don't know where she got the beeswax. I'm sure they used to have. She lived in Wilkes-Barre, and they always talked about the hucksters that would come around. I don't know if she got them there, or if neighbors had bees. I don't know where she originally got her beeswax from. But you could use a candle. They used to have beeswax candles, and they would use those at Easter time. She could have used one of those.
Oh, okay. Another question or another observation from Maggie. She was just interested. These are hard-boiled eggs, not blown or hollow eggs.
Correct. Yes, you can blow them out. And usually with the Ukrainian Pysanky, they do blow the eggs out, and then you're working with just the egg shell. And you can do that with this also. It's a little then you don't have to worry about them decaying and smelling. But my mother never did that. They always boiled the eggs. Either one is fine.
Okay. Are there other questions maybe from other members of our audience? Other members of our team here?
Yeah, so we definitely welcome more questions. Turn my camera on here. Definitely welcome more questions as you all have them. So please, what would be best would be the Q&A box, but also the chat is available, and we can answer have ask the panelists to answer them now, and also we have a time for Q&A later. So either is possible. Yes, please keep giving us your questions. Mira and I have some additional questions from Barb as those questions come in. So one thing that we wanted to ask both panelists here today, Barb, was about change and the future of tradition. Could you tell us what, if any, change you've seen in Pisanki in recent years, and what you see as the future of this tradition in central Pennsylvania?
Well, as far as my work with the Pisanki is usually more personal. It's just a family tradition. What I've noticed in teaching my children, especially my daughter and my daughter-in-law, is they get very creative with the designs. I tend to do the designs that my grandmother and my mother taught, and then I get creative after I do that. And I find when they're doing this, they get very creative right away. They come up with their own designs, and that's a good thing. I do that too. And you try something, and sometimes you look at it and you think, well, I'm not doing that one again. But that is the creative process of it. You don't have to just stick to the European designs, but I want those to be passed down because that's the history. So I've taught several people, just friends who wanted to know how to do this process. And I find when they're doing it, again, they're creating their own designs right away.
Another question from Amy here. How many eggs do you make each year?
I do, because I give them away a lot, I do about maybe between 9 and 12 dozen. So I start, with the process, I start a day of just getting the eggs prepared, a day of getting the dyes prepared, and then I do several days of actually putting the wax on and then taking the wax off. So it's a process. And it doesn't need to take that long. It just depends on how much you're making.
So for those of you just joining us, or if you missed the very beginning, this is our first panel of the AFS Summer Series, Easter Traditions of Central Pennsylvania. And we're speaking with Barb Felty about, not Ukrainian, Polish Pisanki. And I wanted to ask, you mentioned that traditionally the priests usually bless the eggs, and then they might be presented in the church, but also shared with other people as gifts. And I was wondering if you'd noticed from learning in your childhood this tradition, and then now that you're passing it on to the next generation, do you see it playing a different role in the community? Are people producing them as often? Are they playing a role in churches as often?
I don't see in the area that I live, I don't see the eggs playing a big role at all. Because I'm in my church, I'm the only one that I know of that does this. And but you still have the blessing of the bread. And when I was growing up, I can remember the priest actually coming to the home to bless the bread and bless the eggs and bless the dwelling and all who dwell in it. And then some of the churches now, and usually it's the Eastern Rite of the churches, I'm speaking of Catholic churches, that have the blessing of the bread and the eggs, and people can bring them in. Now, how many people that involves, I don't know. I just know in our church, we don't have the blessing of the eggs.
Another question, this one from Kirsten. Is this tradition mainly passed between women, or are men involved?
From my experience, it was my grandmother, my mother, and then of the three of us, my brother, my sister, and I, it's mainly the women. But my grandsons are learning how to do it, and they're enjoying it. So I'm trying to break that tradition, that anyone can do it. And it doesn't really matter.
Another question from our audience from Maggie. Is there a tradition of making butter lambs? Where you'd actually mold your butter into little lamb shapes?
Yes, I've heard of that. I have not done that. I've tried to do that with chocolate, not with butter.
David and Mira, do you have other questions for us?
Well, I think we're about to transition to our next artist. So we'd like to acknowledge a few people. Thank you, Lyra. Dennis, thank you for your camera work there. That was excellent. And then also, I know some people in the chat complimented our slideshow for the beautiful images. Those are, in fact, Barb Felty's eggs that were on that slide, but they were not taken by us. They were taken by Amy Skillman, who is here with us. So I'd like to both acknowledge her and let everybody know that Amy did an interview with Barb that you could find. I believe it was with the Susquehanna Folk for the Susquehanna Folk Society, and you can find that free online for anyone that's interested in additional. Oh no, Amy's saying no. She did the article, but they were actually also done by Dennis. So thank you, Dennis, twice over, and thank you, Amy, for putting together that article that everyone can, article and interview that everyone can find. So we're going to transition now, but if there are any questions, please use that Q&A box, because we do have Q&A time at the end. It could be for one of our presenters, the other, or it would be beautiful, some sort of question that synthesizes both presentations for both artists. So next, we're going to introduce Mary Lou Leisey. Mira, do you mind doing this?
Hello, how are you? I was asked to talk about making chocolate Easter eggs in central Pennsylvania, and it seems to be a very Pennsylvania recipe. Every area of the country has things that they're known for, but we are known for our chocolate Easter eggs. If you look up recipes for chocolate Easter eggs, you will find them filled with potatoes or marshmallows or pudding, or just made and they're hollow so you can stuff them with M&Ms. Those are not our Easter eggs. Our Easter eggs, basic recipe in this area is always Philadelphia cream cheese, butter or margarine, confectioner sugar, and some kind of extract or other filler like peanut butter or coconut. And they're very popular. I figured the other year that there are 4 churches in our small town that make Easter eggs, and another one that's just right outside our area, that we sold maybe 250,000 eggs in 1 year. And that, I'm not sure that's the healthiest thing to do, but that's what happens. If you would like to know what they taste like, if you've never eaten one, a peanut butter egg is very much like a Reese's peanut butter cup, but not like a Reese's peanut butter egg. They're different. It's more like a peanut butter cup. And a coconut egg is very much like a Mounds bar. And the peppermint egg is very much like a York peppermint patty. And I'm not sure which came first, the chicken or the egg. Reese's started production in 1928. When I was a little girl in the 1950s, a local church in our town, the Calvary Orthodox Presbyterian Church, was making eggs to support their private school. But there were also other people that made eggs, such as the lady who owned the local ice cream stand made eggs and sold them. So Easter eggs in central Pennsylvania have been around for a long time. Our church makes 8 types of eggs, basically 4 flavors coated in different types of chocolate. And then we will do special orders for more if you want something else. But most of the churches in this area make peanut butter, which I figured out, let me see, I wrote it down here, is 2/3 of the sale is peanut butter eggs. And then the other types are vanilla cream, peppermint, and coconut. Coconut is also a pretty big seller. We coat them with different types of chocolate. I brought some. Now these eggs, we did not do this last year because of the pandemic. We have some eggs here, and they are wrapped in plastic for the state. We have different kinds. But these were in my friend's freezer from last year. And so I'm going to open one and show you how it works. This is what we do.
And we have a few here as well for Folklorists Love Variation in Tradition. This is from a competing but nearby church, so we can show
Right,
some.
those are Chambers Hills. Yes.
Right.
This is a milk chocolate coconut cream. And what we do is we have 4 teams of people that work. We have a small facility in our church to do this, so we really can't grow too much. But we make an Easter egg. Let me see where I am here. Okay. And if I cut it in half, you can see this is the filling. The first people that come in and work make the filling of the egg. And we usually have a team of 4 or 5 people. They work twice a week. They put the filling into the refrigerator, and later on the rollers come in and weigh out the amount that goes in an egg so that they're all the same. And they weigh them and roll them out, put them back in the refrigerator. And then the dippers come in and put the chocolate on and trim them up. And the wrappers come in and wrap them in colored foil so we know what kind is what. They're all color coded. And we have, well, one year we were selling them at a farmer's market. And it just so happened that the Department of Agriculture was going through checking all the vendors, and they suggested heavily that we get a license to sell our eggs. So when you get your license, everything must be labeled. And because they have to be in a certain print, the labels actually end up being larger than the egg. Okay, which is why the paper is put inside the plastic, and then the egg is wrapped and put in there too. So we enjoy doing this. This was started as through our fellowship committee at church, which I was a member of. And we used to get together and have picnics and do dinners and things, but we started this as a fundraising thing, just like the other church had started it to support their school. We started it to help with the overhead. Another church in our area started it so that they could pay off their mortgage. It is quite a significant amount of money on an egg because everybody sells an egg. Most of us sell an egg for $1. And if you buy it from the church, okay. And then what happens is about 20% of that goes into cost, okay? And so you're making about 80 cents on every egg, which is significant. When we started this about 10 years ago, and we made about 8,000 eggs. In 2012, we were up to 12,000 eggs. In 2019, we were up to 26,000 eggs, okay? But during the pandemic, we had to shut down. So last year it was 18,000, and this year we didn't make them at all. But, which is why I have an old egg to show you. But more important than the fundraising is the socialization. Mm-hmm. It is a way, we are a fellowship committee. It is a way to get our older members together several times during the week. It is expanded that other churches have come in to help us. Friends and neighbors of the people also come in and help us, and it gets us all out during the winter. I'm basically one of the young people doing this. And so it's a fun thing to do. Let me see what I have here. I wrote some notes down. We start our egg production basically 12 weeks before Christmas now. That gives us 10 weeks to make eggs, make about 2,500 a week. Everybody gets to come at least twice a week to visit everyone. And then 2 weeks before Christmas, we spend that time filling any orders that we weren't able to do. And we never work, except for me who does sales, we never work during Holy Week. Most churches use that method. There's one church that starts later. And that's basically, but some of us, like me, since I'm doing labels and things, start actually before Christmas. And the girls that do the supply ordering start before Christmas. I can't see that this is going to grow much larger in our church. We just don't have the facilities to be bigger. It's okay, there's a big enough market. And let's see. Most of the churches in our area did not make any eggs last year with COVID. The one church, Seven Sorrows, did try. They didn't have a large enough volunteers coming in. Mm-hmm. And basically, because of COVID and because we sell through where people work or at hairdressers or at restaurants or places like that, our business markets were gone last year. So we expect to do it again next year. And did you have any questions or anything?
Yes. So this is fascinating to us because it's this multi-million-dollar industry that also is run by volunteers and for a charitable cause. And so you already hit on some of the ideas. We know the state of Pennsylvania is starting to get interested in this market as well. We've heard that from various people involved in this, that the state is becoming more and more interested in the egg market. But we're interested also in the traditional aspect of it. One thing we heard was that there's some concern, as you mentioned, that the volunteers are getting older and older, and that there's some traditional aspects to the recipe and the mixing that are perhaps endangered because of that. What do you think about that?
I think the egg tradition will continue. It may not continue in all of the churches, but it'll pop up in a different church. Just like the church where my husband went to school, made them in the 50s and then stopped. And another church hopped up and started. I think, Mira, in your article, you mentioned the one church sold well over 100,000 eggs one year. Mm-hmm. They don't sell that much anymore because their population's older, but another church has hopped up and is very close to that. So I think the tradition will continue.
This is interesting. Jessica in the chat, she said, I hope the Hershey Foundation supports this tradition. So for those of you who don't know, Hershey is a prominent company that is located in South Central Pennsylvania. Mary Lou, would you tell everyone what the general consensus about Hershey is in the Easter egg community, as far as whether you do or do not use their chocolate?
Well, they don't sell to small suppliers. So we generally buy from Wilbur's. Wilbur's has been bought out by another company, but they still sell chocolate. And so we usually buy from Wilbur's. And most of the churches around have a different supplier. My personal feeling about Hershey is they make a wonderful peanut butter cup. Mr. Reese started that company. And I am looking at our egg sales and I'm thinking, we charge $1 an egg. We make 80 cents off that egg, but we don't buy any machinery. We don't pay any employees. And I'm wondering how Mr. Reese made any money at all doing this, because he certainly was paying labor and buying very expensive equipment. I can say that this year, since we had no eggs to sell, and it's not something you want to do at home, particularly because a batch of eggs makes over 100 eggs. And that's a lot of Easter eggs just to have in your house. So I bought my grandchildren Reese's peanut butter eggs, not peanut butter cups. And I did not realize how much better our eggs were than Reese's peanut butter eggs. It's not the same ingredient in both of a peanut butter cup and a Reese's peanut butter egg are not the same ingredients. And the peanut butter egg is certainly not as good as ours. Ours is much better.
I can attest to that. It's absolutely true. So I think it's really interesting. So I grew up with this tradition. I took it for granted. We always were going to have chocolate eggs, and most or many Easters, we would have a sampler of as many churches' eggs we could find. And then we'd just indulge in sampling around the family, you know, each one, and we'd have a competition, or we'd vote on which one we liked best. But there are several churches who are doing this. And it's interesting that as far as we've heard from speaking to people, there's not any animosity. There's healthy, friendly competition. But do you notice that there's any kind of territory, like certain churches have a particular territory where they usually sell their eggs? Or is it kind of, it's just everyone can sell everywhere and that's fine?
Most of the businesses try to support churches. And when I deliver eggs to certain businesses, there may be eggs there from 2 or 3 churches for people to make a choice. A lot of those businesses will pay $1 an egg and then turn around and sell them for $1. So what I personally do at our church is throw in extra eggs. I kind of miscount so that they're actually getting a nickel on an egg. The competition's fairly friendly. It's not a problem. For example, I think the latest entry into the egg making has been Seven Sorrows Catholic Church, and they run during Lent a fish fry every Friday night. And so we asked if we could go sell our eggs at their fish fry, and they were very happy to have us come. And we were there one week and it went extremely well. And the next week they sort of moved us out of the way. And the third week they said, we're going to make these ourselves. And that's fine, because quite frankly, we could not supply that amount of eggs out of our little church. And that's fine. The other thing is when you're dealing with the businesses, I cannot just walk into a hairdresser that I don't know and say, would you sell our eggs? You really need to have a connection. So we sell at a lot of gas station, convenience stores. We sell at restaurants. We sell at a bar. For some reason, one bar in town, the big seller is white chocolate peanut butter. I don't know why. I can't imagine that goes with a drink, but that's what sells. We sell a tremendous amount at the state. We have people who work at the state. We sell thousands of eggs at the state. We sell at local farmers markets. We sell at other people's businesses. TMI was a big buyer. We had a local pharmacy that would buy thousands, and they would just put them out on display. Now, some of the business would pay $1 and turn around and sell them for $1.50. Okay. We didn't cut them any special deals. you know. But if, you know, and I think that's nice. The one pizza parlor goes to Geyer's church, who makes eggs, and they start later than us. So they will sell our eggs until they have their church's eggs. So it's all been very, very friendly and very nice. So
I think it's a fascinating economic model. And if I were more of an economist, I think it would be fun to study from that perspective too, because there's a natural sort of balance that occurs between all of the churches that you just described.
right.
So
And we have other churches that will come in and help us make our eggs, which I think, you know, not as a church sponsored event, but you know, somebody has a group of friends at another church and they come and help us. And then when they make whatever they're known for, well, the one church makes caramels and throughout the year, then we will go up and help them, you know. So it's just it's more of a social thing, and it does make good money, but it is more of a social thing, and we appreciate that. That's a chance to do that.
So we have a few questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Is that good? Okay, so Marilyn has asked what kinds of extract, and I think you talked a little bit about the different flavors, but could you talk again about the different flavors and the extracts that are used?
And we'll show some of them over here as you mentioned them too.
Okay, the vanilla cream have
Nope, we don't have one of those.
We don't have an example of that, but
Okay.
when we do, we'll show.
The vanilla cream is basically the cream cheese, butter or margarine, sugar, confectioner sugar, and a vanilla extract is basically what it is. So when you make a batch of vanilla cream, you get about 100 eggs, okay? Peppermint eggs is, we use a mint extract instead of the peppermint extract. There's a slight difference in the flavor, and it makes it sort of like a York peppermint patty. We only coat our peppermint eggs in dark chocolate because we found that the milk chocolate was just too much. Some people like it, and we will do that for you, but we aren't going to make hundreds in that. The coconut and the peanut butter do not have vanilla in them. They have coconut and they have peanut butter, and a significant amount. Yes. So
Wonderful.
yeah.
Let's see.
Do you personally, Marilyn wants to know, do you personally have a preference of milk or dark? And is there a tradition of one or the other?
My personal preference? Oh, I like all chocolates. But I can tell you the biggest seller by far is milk chocolate peanut butter, probably for every church.
I think that's what I think of if you just say a chocolate egg, it's
now here's my specialty that I like, because you can special order things and we will try, but you buy the coconut egg with no chocolate, okay? And you bring them home and you cut them in half and roll them in a ball, little balls. Then you roll them in cinnamon. And you have for St. Patrick's Day, Pennsylvania, Irish potato candy. Irish potato candy was invented in Philadelphia, of course. Has basically the same ingredients, Philadelphia cream cheese and coconut and sugar. And they are not Irish, and there's no potatoes in them. But you could, it's a nice St. Patrick's Day treat. And we get requests for that every year too, is coconut eggs with no chocolate. So, and you know, that's exactly what they're going to do, is make Irish potatoes. So,
I'd never heard of that. So now I'm very curious to try that next year. I guess we'll have to wait.
I'll make you one, Mira.
Oh, I would love that. Thank you. So this is just a reminder to everyone, if you do have questions, there's a Q&A icon on the bottom. So please feel free to put your questions there or in the chat. Did you want to ask something?
Oh, no, I was just going to point out other people's questions this point. So Amy was asking, are these made at the church as a group or at home? So they're made at the church, but is there any element of this that occurs at home?
Only me typing labels.
The sales
No,
director.
nothing. If you're going to be certified by the state, when they come in to give you your license, they examine everything. I tried to make a list on one of my papers here. First of all, when you work, you must wear a hair covering, a hairnet, a scarf, a hat, something. You may wear no jewelry. You must wear gloves. And of course, if you're working with COVID, you're going to have to wear a mask. So, okay, you have to do those. They come in and examine your kitchen. They inspect every appliance. They look at things that I didn't even know you needed to wash in your kitchen. Okay. They look at, we have a cold storage room. Okay. They look at your cold storage room. Everything has to be, not that we would sit anything on the floor, but everything has to be so many inches off the floor and a certain temperature. And they're very fussy. You could not make them at home and pass state inspection. Then of course the labels have to be done by their standards. I don't know why some foods can make smaller labels in the store, I've noticed, but ours have to be in 10 point. And they must list all allergens. So to get around the allergen problem, since we do have a child in our church that has a peanut butter allergy, when we do peanut butter eggs, they're all done on one day, on one of the, well, actually it's a 2-day process, but they're all done together. And then we make the other eggs on the other days, so that we can clean and sanitize everything in between because of peanut allergies. So, so nothing is done at home with this egg making.
I'm not sure Chamber Hill Methodist is doing 10-point font there. It looks a little smaller than 10-point font.
Well, I don't know.
So Maryland,
That's 10 point.
That's 10 point right there.
You can read that.
So,
The problem with the labels is not only do you have to list confectioner sugar, but confectioner sugar is actually sugar with cornstarch. So then you have to type confectioner sugar, sugar cornstarch, you know, coconut, and whatever they put in the coconut to keep it the way it is. You know, when you type out your chocolate, you have to list all the ingredients in the chocolate. It makes your labels very long. So.
Did you have a question?
I was just going to ask Marilyn's question. I'm interested in this as well. We kind of hit on it before. You seem less concerned than some of the other people we've spoken with about this. But Marilyn says, since you're one of the young ones, is the tradition being shared or carried on even by the younger people? We know we've heard that retirees are the leaders often in this endeavor, but you feel like young people are doing their part?
You have to understand that older people do better driving in the day. Okay. Now, of course, I'm young enough, I drive anywhere, but my husband's over here laughing at me. But we set this up so the mixers work Tuesday and Thursday morning. Okay. Things are refrigerated. The dippers and trimmers, or the rollers, work Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. The people that dip them in the chocolate and trim them and make them look nice, they work Wednesday morning, but because we would like to pull the working people in so that they know what's going on, they also work Thursday night. So we have times, and then the wrappers work Wednesday and Friday afternoons. So, and some people work in a lot of different groups. They have a good time. They have a friend in this group and they have a friend in that group. And so they just keep coming back. I think it will continue. I think the bigger problem is how long some of the small denomination churches are going to continue. Mm-hmm. You know, we have big mega churches out there that seem to be doing fine. And then we have some of the smaller Protestant denominations are just older churches is what they are. So
that, well, obviously that would affect, yeah, definitely the population available too.
Mhm.
So, but also then on the other side, maybe is a need for churches to fundraise in this way as the overall offerings are shrinking as the population shrinks too. So I wonder if there's a relationship there between churches taking this on as additional fundraising.
I don't know. It's just an idea that was brought up on our fellowship committee. Basically, our fellowship committee did things like, oh, it's Washington's birthday. We're going to make cherry pies. Does anyone want to buy one? It wasn't something we sold outside of church. The pumpkin bread we make at Thanksgiving or Easter or in October. Christmas candy we would make, and we would just sell that within the church. And Easter eggs started that way. We were just selling them we'd make some, it was fun to make them, and we just sold them to the people that were coming to church, but it just grew from there because somebody would say, hey, I took this home to my friend and she said, can she have some for her store? And it just grew. We physically, with our facilities, can't really grow any more than what we're doing. We would not have the space to store supplies and finished egg products and things like that.
But as far as I can tell, there is infinite demand for.
There is. We're happy for any church that wants to hop up and make eggs. It keeps the tradition alive. Yeah. And the eggs between the churches are different. Ebenezer outside of Middletown, I think makes the prettiest egg. But I like our chocolate better, Geyer's Church out the town the other way makes a much smaller egg, and they sell it for less. And they don't have as long a time period, but they do very well. Seven Sorrows doesn't seem to have a form to theirs. They just kind of make them. But they're okay, but I do like ours. I like Chambers Hills too. That's what you have in front of you at your.
I'm looking forward to enjoying one afterwards. I see another question from Kirsten. Kirsten, excuse me. So Kirsten asks, I'm interested in the gender distribution of the participants in making the chocolate eggs. Are more women than men involved in the process?
More women than men are involved in the process, but we have men on all committees.
Except sales director, right? There's no male sales directors, correct?
Well, there used to be, but you can have too many fingers in the pie. It's basically what happened. We have men on every committee. And the one man we're really thankful for, he's a trained chef. So he shows up for everything that we make, and he stays and works all the committees, and we like that. So basically our church is more women than men to begin with. There are more women there. So I'd say it's pretty even. I mean, it's not 50-50, but it matches the population of the church. As far as sales go, when we started this, you went back and you packed your own things, or you laid an order form there and somebody filled it. And I was trying to help, and I filled all these orders of order forms that were laying there and called the people, and they said, I already got them. Or I said, oh, okay. Or there were other order forms there, and somebody called them and said, they said, well, I already paid so-and-so. And so you needed to do something where sort of there was an in-charge person and have put a system in place for how the orders were filled and delivered and the money was turned in. Okay. It wasn't that money was stolen or anything like that, but it just, you needed some kind of system where you weren't doing the same job over and over and over again, you know, with paperwork.
Well, thank you,
So-
Mary Lou. We're going to have Barb and Mary Lou both come on screen, both of our artists here. And so we think that this panel touched on actually a lot of the themes that we are hoping to touch on at the conference proper in October and also throughout the summer series. So themes of ecosystems and how those ecosystems contribute to tradition, resilience of traditions, sustainability, environments that encourage sustainability, anxieties about the future, and how to maintain traditions and carry on. So at this point, if we could open it up for any questions we have for Mary Lou or Barb specifically, or about anything that perhaps ties the two together, we would be very interested to hear your questions and to hear their responses to your questions. So you could put them in the Q&A. You could also just put them in the chat at this point. We would see them immediately and ask them.
And while we're waiting for any more questions, I think I keep on returning to this, that we really see here in Middletown, and even in your description, Mary Lou, of the way that roles sort of naturally evolve. Someone needed to step in and take control of the sales specifically, because otherwise orders would get lost or they'd be doubled up. And so there's this system that kind of has naturally emerged for at least this particular tradition. And as things are organized right now in the central Pennsylvania area, there's a whole ecosystem that really supports the egg tradition, the chocolate Easter egg tradition. And I'm thinking about the Pisanki eggs and how their role in the community has sort of changed over time, and perhaps the ecosystem for that particular tradition has changed over time. And that would be maybe one of the reasons why it's it plays less of a role, at least in your current church, Barbara. Maybe in different churches it is different. And it would be a fascinating research project to dive in and to really look at those connections and think about the system that supports tradition. We don't have time to do that today, but it's got me thinking about the theme for our upcoming conference. Let me look at the chat.
I think Chris is also pointing out, if anybody would like to be promoted up to be on screen and ask their question live, that can be done as well.
And it looks like, so no questions yet. Yvonne, I wanted to come back to you. And
Sure.
You, as a Middletown resident, did anything come up? I mean, you're very familiar with both of these traditions. So I was curious, I think you've read our article, so you've read a little bit about our research, but as someone who's partaken of the Easter egg or both Easter egg traditions, anything coming up for you?
When I was a child, we made these eggs at home. You know, peanut butter eggs were my favorite. The coconut eggs were grandma's favorite. And I have to say, we made large ones, you know, sort of that size. And they were really, really a bear to make. And I am so grateful that churches took them up and put them into sizes that, you know, this size. So I usually have to cut these in half. This is a Chambers Hill one. But I'm really grateful that it's, there, that they're available. So it's really great. Mary Lou, thank you for continuing this tradition for all of us. I'm particularly delighted because I do like them a lot.
Well, we have a good time, as basically it was about fellowship, and the money is actually secondary, and you know, we don't want it to become the primary, but it comes in handy.
Good.
So Marilyn asks in the chat, any chance of having either the painted eggs or the chocolate eggs at the next AFS meeting? And so we would love to be able to share this tradition with more people, helping the churches, but also they're so delicious. So that would be really fun. I don't know that there would be enough production, enough available supply for us to make that connection, but it's something I think we could look into. If any churches have a nice frozen stash, since it's kind of out of season in October.
It will be. Yeah.
But if we could find some, we would certainly make those available.
Well, the local arrangements committee, Brant and I co-chairing it, we're trying our darndest to make sure we can have as much human interaction with each other at our meeting in October. And if things work out, we'll also really request that people can come and see them in person, meaning Barb and Mary Lou.
Mhm. We'd like that.
Yes,
So
That
would
would
we.
be nice, wouldn't it?
that
It
would be.
It would.
So Jessica asks, she'd like to know about the Pisanki tradition, whether Barb, you worry about, or let me see if I'm reading this correctly, knowing that she's passed the Pisanki tradition on to her creative kids, but not many beyond you, Barb, make them locally. So do you worry about the continuation of the tradition?
I do, because America, everything is the melting pot. And because of that, a lot of younger people aren't really that interested in the older traditions. Now, maybe as you get older and you start looking at where you came from and your history, you might become more interested in that. But I do worry about that getting lost. Now, the people who do the real Pisanki designs, they are artists. This is more of a folk, it was my grandparents were farmers, and they couldn't afford the kiskas and everything else. They used what they had on the farm. And I hate to see that being lost, because it's not difficult. Anybody can do it. It just takes a little persistence. And it makes a wonderful gift and presentation at Easter time. So yeah, I worry about it being lost, because even with my children, you encourage them to be creative, but you don't want the old designs being lost.
So we got one more question here from Kirsten. Excellent synthesizing question to both Barb and Mary Lou. How do your choices of ingredients connect to products from your local communities? And do you see your products as helping to sustain the local economy? So question for both of you.
Well, I would say, other than maybe the sugar, everything is you have Philadelphia cream cheese, you have I'm thinking you have dairy products, and so I would say, other than the sugar and maybe the peanut butter, that they are basically local. The chocolate is, although it's grown somewhere else, it's a local company, so that's a help. And then they're sold in local businesses. They're not sold. I know we've had people send our eggs to Germany and Mexico and places like that, but basically we buy locally and we sell locally. So
What do you think, Barb? Is your Pisanki a local Pisanki?
Well, I buy the eggs from the local farmers market. I try to get, I buy them also from the grocery stores. And the dyes you buy, it's all your local grocery stores, but it's a little different. It's a very narrow choice here where you're only using eggs and dyes. Mm-hmm. And distilled water, it's all local businesses, but the eggs are the big thing, to buy them from the local. It's best to use organic, farm fresh organic. So, they're your best eggs. So there you work out that way. But it's a little different than the chocolate eggs,
Less ingredients.
much less.
I think we have quite time for one last question here. Chris, would you do us the honors? One last question.
Sure. I just want to ask, everyone on the panel, but also people that are attendees here. Youth engagement is such a big issue in passing traditions down. I struggle with it in the communities I work with in Brooklyn. Does anyone have any good ideas about how to get the next generation involved in some of these traditions, or any models that they're aware of that work? I mean, I see different ones in Brooklyn with youth-led activist organizations and things like that, but just curious. Maybe this is something for the whole group here, but I'd love to hear some ideas, because I think it's vital that we do that. Anyone? Thanks.
Well, we invite our children to come help us, just like Barb trained her grandchildren. So we try around soccer games and things like that. So.
I think Mary Lou and Barb both have the right ideas of involving children and involving young people. Certainly, Barb has taught my children how to do the Pizanki. We used to spend Saturdays over there doing them. My grandmother certainly taught me how to make those eggs, the chocolate eggs, although I much prefer the ones, Mary Lou, you guys are making.
Thank you.
I do, they're really good, gosh. And short of possibly taking these into schools, which I don't think is possible right now, possibly to scouting organizations, and teaching youngsters that way, and clearly involving our own families. These are all possibilities for energetic people to engage in.
All right. Well, I'm going to jump in and thank all of our participants today. A big shout out, Mary Lou and Barb, for your insights and for sharing your crafts with us. David, Mary, Yvonne, thank you for your questions, and everyone who attended. Appreciate your questions, and hope that this sparked an interest in AFS 2021. We encourage you to find time if you'd like to register. We're looking forward to our event, hoping to hold it as much in person as possible. Also, please pay attention to AFS updates. Our next event is coming in less than a month. And again, we'll be having the Balkan music